It's clear that when men connect in spaces where they feel safe and secure, it does save lives. Our motto is connection is protection, and it clearly plays out when you begin to see how men's groups, good men's groups, operate and how it really does make a difference. Hi, I'm Ian. I run Helpu Cymru, and we work with men's organisations and men's groups all across Wales. And what's fantastic to see is the actual difference they make to people's lives. Quite often when we hear the word men's groups, we really don't know what happens behind the scenes, really. But what is amazing is just the differences that it really does make. We've worked with people from men's sheds, Andy's Man's Club, you name it, lots of different organisations and lots of different independent groups around Wales. And what's fantastic is to see the difference it really does make to their lives. They're not just spaces where men necessarily sit and just gossip, although I've seen that as well, but they're places where communities formed. And at the end of the day, the sense of community really brings protection to help men's mental health. I was a bit of a virgin really to men's groups until I stepped through the doors of one a few years ago in Cardiff. And at the time, I didn't really know what to expect. You know, you've got that sense that, you know, is this space quite threatening to me? Because I don't see myself as a man's man. So my worry was you enter in a space where you might feel a bit intimidated. What was cool was I'd never, ever been in a space where I'd seen men be vulnerable and share. And because of my own really bad experiences of actually being abused by men, it was a hard thing to try and go into that space. But what was fantastic is actually seeing that when men can be vulnerable and men can be open, it was brilliant to see what difference they were making to people's lives in the room, and in fact what they actually done in my life too. I think these spaces are really important. I mean, there aren't that many spaces where men feel that they can have a conversation that may go beyond this kind of surface level conversation. We know we talk about men being shoulder to shoulder in a rugby club or at the football or down a pub, but sometimes they don't feel that safe. And as somebody who's felt threatened in the space of men myself, I recognise that it's not that easy to have conversations, especially when men can be competitive, they can be ego-driven. It sounds like I'm being judgmental. I'm not. I'm just aware that men can be a bit hard work sometimes and maybe not allow people to be heard. It's often said that men don't talk. I think the reality is they don't really have spaces they feel safe enough to talk. It's more important, I think, that they feel like they can be in a space where they're heard, where they're listened to, and they're not judged, and they've not got the egos coming out. And actually, even just the basic thing of encouragement, men don't do it generally. They don't pat each other on the back very often. And just to have that kind of sense of encouragement about when something's going well, it's rare. So these spaces are more than important. I've had some fantastic opportunities to work with lots of men's groups around Wales and visit them. And what's amazing is to go to them and actually meet men whose lives have been changed by it, like properly changed, not just some kind of, this is not a sales job. It's reality. We're really seeing that. I mean, take one example. I know that Pontypridd Men's Shed, a brilliant bunch. You turn up there, you feel really welcome. They're really open. They've so many men who've been through really different experiences who have said how other people have pulled them out of the situation they're in. And we run our own men's group. So I've been able to see firsthand how it's helped people who've suffered with suicidal ideation and suicide attempts come back from that. We're not sitting on our laurels about that, but you can see that, you can hear that in the stories. Because one of the other things that's really important about men's groups is stories. They're underestimated. But what I mean by that, as somebody who studied as a therapist, knowing the stories matter, stories of resilience matter, stories of how somebody got through things matter. And the only way we hear those stories quite often, it could be through the media, but more immediately to hear those stories in a setting with real people who've had real experiences and overcome real issues, it's a massive, powerful effect on people. Knowing there's a space you can go to regularly to be able to be heard is amazing. It's fantastic. I mean, I think anybody, any human, men, male, female, anybody would want that kind of environment to have. The environments can be a bit few or far between, even in a family setting where maybe there's lots of, there doesn't even need to be family tension. Let's face it, it could just be that families have their own issues to deal with and you've got children around who you have to concentrate on them first, or it may be you're not really heard in a work environment because of course you're supposed to be getting on with a job. So these spaces and these regular meets kind of keep you grounded over a period of time rather than just like a one-off hit, which can often happen in therapy, for example. You're in a situation where you feel grounded enough to know that you're there next week or you're there the week after. And it really gives you some sense of kind of safety and also some sense of belonging. Some people would say that the words connection and safety are kind of soft things. But come on, let's face it. I mean, the suicide stats for men, and it's particularly in Wales, are pretty hideous. They're not good. So it's clear that men don't feel they've got spaces to be heard, because for me, the suicide stats play that out. You know, who are these guys talking to? What scenarios are they in where they feel that they can actually say, look, I'm really struggling? There just aren't enough of those spaces. So I think the great thing when we set up Helpu was that we really wanted to encourage people to get out there and set up more spaces, because it might seem like a soft option to decide you're going to create a safe space for men and where men can be with each other. But trust me, it makes a massive difference to people's lives. And I'd love to see it make a massive difference to the suicide stats in Wales. The more creative we can be about how we get men together into spaces, the better. It could be via art, it could be via music. I mean, I'd really encourage people to think creatively and maybe think outside the box, really. Maybe in your vicinity, you're really close to the mountains. Why don't we have mountain walking? Why don't we look at climbing? You may be in a city. Why don't we look at, a city sport, or a sport that can be done in a city? We can be really open and really creative about the way men meet together, as long as it provides opportunity to be heard, to speak, and also to hear people's stories that will really help people with their resilience. When a men's group's really working well, you kind of know it. You just know it. It's lovely to see where you've got 3 or 4 men who are really acting in a real empathic way to somebody who's just shared their story, who, in a sense of putting their arm around somebody, you just know it. It's really visceral. You can't replicate the kind of emotional impact that has. And it makes a massive difference to their lives. I've worked as a therapist for a number of years, and therapy is really useful and really important. However, I'm also aware that connecting in communities, I think, is even more important. Feeling a sense of belonging, feeling a sense of place, feeling the sense that not everything is in your head, but we're all connected. So I think men's group are an expression of community, and community matters so much. There's a really interesting thought, and it's partly true, that mental health is within our heads and needs fixing. But there's something wider than that. Our social connections need fixing, because that's what helps us fix our mental health. So while men attend a group where they may be being heard, they may be having the ability to speak, that is fixing. It's not about what's in the head, what disorder they've got, what mental health issues they've got. The fixing comes when we recognise we're in a tribe together. And part of that recognition is that we are in this together. We have a shared human experience. And when we start to see that shared human experience working out, we begin to see better well-being outcomes for people. What's amazing is when people first come to the groups, they're often quite quiet and they often don't speak. And when they do speak, it may sound that what they're talking about is trivial. Sit with it, because in 4 weeks, 5 weeks time where they feel comfortable, you may be in a position where they share stuff that's really deep for them. And I think that's amazing. And I think they should have the right to sit there and not speak, because frankly, I can't go into a room and trust everybody there. I want to see what I feel like in that space. So I would encourage people to allow people to find their own path before they start to speak. And they do. In my experience, if you've created the right space, they do begin to speak. but you don't need to force it. And you also don't need to worry about what their intentions for being there are either, because actually I found you eventually found out what their intentions are, and it's normally that they're not feeling heard where they are, or they're in a situation where they don't feel like they belong. And I think to give the space and the time, just the space and the time to give them that sense to settle in, I think is so important. Practically, running a men's group can be rewarding and it can be exhausting. I think what happens in the room can be a real small part of it, but managing your promotion of what you're doing, managing the kind of WhatsApp space that you need to make announcements in, looking at the website that you might have set up to promote it, it's not easy. It is hard work. And I will say, do not underestimate having people help you with those practical tasks. It's not all about what happens in that space, in the room. In fact, most of the work happens outside of the room, whether that's securing your premises, whether that's just practical things about where are people going to park. So consider the practical stuff. It's rewarding, but it's not easy.